अच्छा बढ़िया बढ़िया ये करो unmute.
Joining. Okay, it's 5:02. Welcome everyone to our fourth curatorial walk this week by the Marine Life of Mumbai. These curatorial walks are a part of Confluence, a virtual exhibition by Mumbai Water Narratives. Mumbai Water Narratives was formed in June 2020, and it brought together around 30 professionals, planners, researchers, social scientists, marine biologists who came together to create an exhibition, a virtual exhibition with 6 galleries across themes ranging from public health to livelihoods to saline waters to built heritage. And today we have a curatorial walk on saline waters. Our speakers today are going to be Abhishek Jamalabad and Sarang Naik from Marine Life of Mumbai. I'll just give a brief introduction to who our speakers are. Marine Life of Mumbai is a 4-year-old community project that aims to present the fascinating array of marine life right here on the big city shores, to take you on a journey of rediscovery of these forgotten natural treasures, and to collectively think how we can share and protect their spaces. MLOM now continues as the flagship community project of the Coastal Conservation Foundation, an organization conceived by MLOM's co-founders and key members to expand beyond the original project's limits. Marine conservation research, outreach, and public education are CCF's pillars of work. We have Abhishek, who is a marine biologist, associate director at Coastal Conservation Foundation, and co-founder of the Marine Life of Mumbai. And we have Sarang Naik, who is a freelance photographer working with the Marine Life of Mumbai. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Abhishek to take us through their exhibit in the Saline Waters Gallery.
Thank you, Akshita. I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So to start with, I'll just tell you a little more about MLON than what Akshita introduced. So like she said, it started as a citizen collective 4 years ago. And the start was very informal. It was just a group of us who knew that there is a lot of biodiversity on Mumbai's urban seashores within the limits of Mumbai city. And there was very little known about this biodiversity. The documentation for it was hard to come by. And most people, including wildlife enthusiasts and nature lovers, were completely unaware of this side to the city. And MLOM started as a sort of community effort to get more people out on the seashores to explore the seashores with us. And at that point, even we knew not as much as we know now about the biodiversity on the seashore. So it started with a few social media posts and a few shore walks that we conducted. We just invited people to come to the seashore and join us as we explored. And over time, that grew into a much larger effort. A lot of people who joined us for our walks ended up joining our team and bringing in different sorts of skill sets to the team. We started expanding into different kinds of communication about what we were finding on the seashores. We started doing on-site, as in physical events for outreach, and also started doing social media and other forms of online outreach a lot more in a lot of different ways, and trying to reach out to many different audiences. And over the whole course of this 4 years, as our team has grown and our activities have grown, it's been a very, very diverse team. Of all the people who have been part of the MLOM team, and some of them still are part of it, very few of them are actually scientists or biologists. The majority are from completely different, completely unrelated backgrounds. And you would think that this is a collective of like-minded people, but actually that's not true at all. There are people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and some are people who weren't even nature lovers or wildlife enthusiasts to start with. It's just people who were curious about this strange world that lies at the edge of the city. And so it started that way, and it kind of grew organically. And shore walks have been one of our hallmark activities at MLOM. And as you know, with the pandemic starting in 2020, there was this lockdown, and our activities had to be suspended for a long time, our on field activities, which is when we started getting a little more creative with substituting these with the online equivalents. And some members of our team came up with these virtual walks, which you can find even now on Instagram, on our Instagram handle. And then at one point, the Confluence exhibition prospect came up, and that was really exciting to us because it was a great platform to try out something that we had never tried out before, something out of the box. Which brings me then to this exhibit that we have in the Saline Waters section of the Confluence exhibition. So we thought of taking all of these shore walks that we were all missing into a sort of virtual form, and we came up with this virtual shore basically. This is an illustration made by Gaurav Patil, who has previously done a lot of art for the MLOM project, even before. And we tried to sort of compress all our findings from the past years into this one exhibit, which was admittedly a very tough job. And as a result, this is only a glimpse. It's just a tiny snapshot of what we've seen. But we've tried to cover as much variety as we can. So in Mumbai, we have broadly these three different seashore habitats, which we've tried to cover here. On the right-hand side, you see a sandy shore, which is basically like what you would see in Juhu or Girgaon, for example, the popular beaches. And these beaches are, well known as recreational sites and, just places to have fun, but they also have a whole lot of wildlife which escapes the eye very often, or escapes our notice. They're right there in front of us most of the time. Then we have rocky seashores, which is the middle section of this exhibit. Rocky seashores are, you find them all along the western edge of the city. There are many, many rocky seashores covering the western edge. And these places are like proper biodiversity hotspots. There are lots and lots of features you can find quite easily on rocky seashores. And we've tried to cover as many of them as we could in this exhibit. And then right on the left-hand side of the map, you have a muddy seashore with a bit of mangroves, which is the kind of seashore you would find on the eastern edge of the city, where the Thane Creek opens out. And on the western edge, you have a few places where there are little creeks and inlets where you find this kind of habitat. So these are the three zones we've tried to cover, and we've covered the intertidal zone of all of these places. The intertidal zone is what MLOM has done most of its work in. It's the zone between the high tide and the low tide. So it's exposed at low tide, which is when we get to walk out onto it and take a look at all the wildlife and the biodiversity there. So in this exhibit, basically you can zoom into any of these zones. There are these zoom buttons here on the top left-hand side, but you can also double click to zoom. So you can zoom into any of these zones in this way, and you can just click and drag around and explore. So we wanted to make it a sort of a free exploration kind of exhibit, where you're not particularly pointed to look at certain things, but you can have the sort of experience that we had when we first stepped on the shore, where we didn't really know what to look at, but there were all these things lying around in front of us. So that's the sort of experience we wanted to try our best to replicate in this virtual format. So you can click and pan around this map. When you find something interesting, you can click on it and you have this pop-up that comes up like so, with a better photograph for a closer view and a bit of information. And there are lots and lots of such creatures all over this map. some of them, like the eel that you see here at the bottom of the rocky shore, this has a video. So there are a couple of creatures that have videos instead of photos. And most of the creatures that you see dotting these shores are clickable in this manner, where you can read a little more about them. I'll show you a few more creatures because some of them are particularly tiny, such as you have these green sea slugs on this patch, which unfortunately you can't zoom in enough to see them, but you can still click on them and you can have a closer view that way. So, so there are a lot of creatures that are sort of hidden, but you can still click on them and know more about them. Similarly, we have creatures here on the muddy seashore, which are mainly, you can see a lot of crabs here and some mud skippers, which are the two most common features you see in the mangroves. But you also have creatures like these bubble snails that you see here, which look like little orange dots when you look at them on the map, but you click and you have a much closer view. So this is the sort of experience we wanted to create with this map. And for the hidden creatures, the tinier creatures that I mentioned, we have this sort of legend below the map, which is basically a pictorial list of everything that is there in the map. So if you're really keen to really look for them, you can go through the legend and try and find those creatures in there. So this is what we've done with the map, but this is ultimately just a glimpse of what we can actually see on the seashore. Like I said, MLOM has been doing its work for 4 years, and there's just too much. We've seen a lot in these 4 years, and it's just too much to put into one single map, which is why we wanted this to just be a glimpse to get some of you interested in then maybe going and checking it out on your own at the seashore or coming for a walk with us. We actually had a physical walk planned as well for the 31st of this month, but unfortunately with the current situation, we need to reevaluate that and we will update accordingly. But for those of you who are still interested in knowing more about our finds over the past 4 years, we have this website, the MLOM website, where we have the database that you see here on the right hand side. So if you click that, it will take you to this website called iNaturalist, which is where we have been logging our finds over the past 3 years. 4 years ago is when we started MLOM, and 3 years ago we started actually cataloging it all on this database. And this is basically an open access database. You can feel free to browse through it, and you can also download and use a lot of that data. Of course, if you're using pictures from here, then please do credit the authors. But basically, this is a website that has everything that we found over the past 4 years. There are pictures and the names of everything that we found. And over the 4 years, you can see that we now have a count of 458 species. These are just marine species and just from the seashores of Mumbai city. And over 4,000 observations that cover these species. And these have all been contributed by the 67 people that you see mentioned here, who have basically been participants who have come on our walks and joined us in exploring the seashores, and over time have decided to contribute their pictures to this open access database. And this is basically a global database website where we have a lot of global experts on these species who help us to identify and sort of refine this catalog. So this is a sort of an ever refining catalog of our finds that we have. And the exhibit on the Confluence website is just a glimpse into this. So other than that, on the Marine Life of Mumbai website, just one last thing I wanted to mention is that, I mean, you can feel free to go through all the sections on the website. There's a lot of interesting stuff. But there is this free resources section where we have guidelines on how you can explore the shore yourself. and we have these shore guides. They're a little old and we need to update them with newer finds, but basically we made these two, these are free downloadable PDFs made by artists who are part of our team. And these are basically sort of like brochures that show the common species at some of the seashores in Mumbai. And we have a few tips on how you can explore on your own, although we would really love it if you do join us on our walks as we explore. Yeah, so I would leave you to explore the exhibit on your own, and we hope to keep the engagement going even beyond this. We can take any questions and discussions and suggestions.
Thank you, Abhishek. I mean, we have all seen what a labor of love this exhibit was over the past 3 months. And of course, the work of MLOM has always been inspiring to all of us. I think there is one question on the chat box by Janjari Jasani.
Yeah.
Can anyone add to this database? I think the database base you mentioned on iNaturalist.
Yeah. So the iNaturalist database is it's very, very simple to use. I think that's one of the biggest plus points of this database. There are a lot of database websites. All of them are good, but iNaturalist it's sort of built like a social media network kind of thing, the interface. So it's as simple as downloading an app on your Android or iPhone and taking a picture of something and uploading it. Even if you upload without knowing what the creature is, just uploading it with a location, someone on iNaturalist then refines that data and puts it into the right database, from where it can be used for any kinds of purposes. Since it's open access, our database has been used by students for their college dissertations. People have used some of the visuals from the database for their own education and outreach work. And most sort of significantly, in 2019, our database was used as a source of baseline information, which then went into some of the high court cases that were concerning the coastal road. So it served quite a lot of purposes, this open access database. It's open-ended from our end. We have never intended it to be used for something specific, but anyone can access it and use as they wish. And I would like to say that the credit for this goes to every single person who has contributed to this over time. And I just wanted to mention that when I spoke about the shore walk guidelines that are on our website, we also have tide charts over there. So, you can check the tide timing and go accordingly if you want to explore on your own. So we have all of those in the free resources section that I just mentioned. I can post the links in a bit in the chat box.
Thank you. There is another question by Aslam Sayed. How does the coastal road in Mumbai affect these marine lights? There was work of shifting coral from Mumbai area. How did it happen, and any idea are they restored?
So how does the coastal road affect? So there are some very direct effects that we know of. Like, for example, when you landfill an intertidal area, when you reclaim it, you're basically just covering the whole area. So it's quite easy to imagine what the impact is there. It's just burying the whole habitat. But there could be a lot of indirect effects as well, but those are something that we don't really know. And the reason why we haven't known about these impacts for so long is because there has been no baseline data to compare against, which I think essentially MLOM's work forms this it's very simple. I admit it's not very not extremely detailed data, but it does set a sort of baseline where we could then see how these things are impacting marine life in the future. So I cannot give a very objective answer to how these development activities affect it. It's something we would also be interested in seeing over time. About the coral work, that I was not personally involved in that. That was something that was carried out completely by the forest department in sites that are not publicly accessible. So I actually do not have an answer to how the restoration went.
We have another question from Shripad Motiram. What do you see as the main threats to the marine life of Mumbai?
I think countless threats. There is a lot of untreated sewage going out from the city. There's a lot of industrial waste. There is a lot of development happening along the coastline, most of which happens without any sort of assessment to as to what the impact would be. But I have to mention that what we have found startling over the course of our work is that a lot of life has adapted to this, seems to have adapted to this, and is it still continuing in these habitats as long as they're not completely landfilled over, which is with the end of them. But otherwise, they seem to be coping with a lot of the threats. I would not say these threats are good, but I mean, I wouldn't say they're actually happy with these threats around and doing well in that, but there seems to be a lot of life around. And that's the narrative we've tried to use throughout MLOM's work when we do our outreach, is that there are a lot of threats. There is this plastic, sewage, and all kinds of other threats, but there also is this life. So when you say that, it also helps people to contextualize these threats better, because when you say there are just these threats and you don't know what's actually living there, it's sort of an incomplete picture. But when you instead show people that there are these colorful corals here, or there's this octopus that is very common on the seashore, and you just leave them at that, this sort of fascination for the life here, then people go back and they put two and two together about the threats and about what should be done to better manage these spaces and to save these spaces. So yeah, I hope that answers the question somewhat at least.
Akshita, one more thing I would like to add to this is, from what I've experienced, over the past 4 years, yes, all of these threats are there, obvious threats like garbage and sewage and reclamation. But the biggest threat I've noticed, is indifference. Like, you won't miss anything that you don't know existed in the first place, right? So that's always been our aim, that to at least make people aware that there's so much over here. And it's only when they become aware of it that they start like valuing it and speaking up against any kind of threat that they face.
Right. That's also, I think, the follow-up question that's been asked by Shripad. So what can citizens do to protect it? And that is also a question that I would like to ask. What can we as citizen groups do to protect these marine life?
I would say, first of all, get to know it, because you can't really protect what you don't know about. And secondly, document it. I would say those are the two easiest things to do. And with something like iNaturalist that I just showed, documentation is easier than ever. It's as simple as taking a photo with your phone and just clicking upload. It's as easy as that. And the people who actually process the data then take it forward from there. So I would say those are the two main things. And when those two things happen, I think topics like this start making their way into common narratives automatically, without anyone having to actually, shoehorn these things into a particular narrative. Once you I was also very new to seashore life when we started MLOM. I've been a marine biologist, but seashores was not my thing. I used to work on, open ocean species. So I was really, when we started MLOM, my mind was blown that there is so much life here on our seashores in Mumbai, that too. So once that happened, and that was the case with a lot of the team members in MLOM, and we sort of started building our lives around these tide timings and all of that. Like, when we had to travel somewhere, we used to look up the tide tables. Like, who does that? Unless you're obsessively walking on the seashores, you don't really do that. And when that happens, then this starts becoming a talking point wherever you go. And, so I would say, just first starting to, give in to the temptation to be fascinated by these things, and just start taking pictures and just start chatting with people about it. I think that's how it starts. And that then makes its way into a larger conservation narrative as well.
Yeah, I think awareness is a really big thing that we should all aim for. We have another question by Aslam. Are the polluted rivers a threat to marine life? So he's heard that Pradeep Tendulkar, you mean, Aslam? There is a type of...
Pradeep Pachadi.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, one of our
There is a...
co-founders. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry. There is a type of marine life which indicates pollution.
Polluted rivers would be a threat, yes, I would say, because they alter the ecosystem. They don't necessarily kill everything, but what happens is we are then left with an ecosystem that is dominated by a few species which are tolerant to pollution. Like a great example of this is the Dadar Bay. If you walk at the seashores in Dadar, you will find it's dominated by a certain kind of marine worm, which is appears to be thriving here. It doesn't really mean it loves the pollution, but it's the only thing that has been able to withstand the pollution. Not the only thing, sorry, there are a bunch of other species as well. But there are these very few species that have been able to tolerate the pollution, which has knocked out the rest of what may have existed here before. And so we have this sort of altered ecosystem. And that then, I mean, when an ecosystem is affected, it topples the fisheries, it topples everything else. So that's the sort of change that polluted rivers bring in, at least in the context of Mumbai. And these species that indicate pollution are the ones that, which I just mentioned, the ones that stay behind. Yeah.
Thank you. And if there are any questions, please also, instead of the chat box, you could directly also ask in the forum by unmuting yourself. We have a question by Ritu Deshmukh. Will stronger coastal laws help in protecting the sea ecology?
I'm not an expert on the laws per se, but I do know that we have strong coastal laws. We have had, and they have continuously been diluted over time. Even like for specific projects, you have laws that are diluted just for a specific project to come through. So that's where the gap lies. I feel the strong coastal laws are already there, but they're not implemented well enough. So that I would say is the gap.
But drawing from that, from what you said, I actually have a question. So I wanted to know, like, since this has come together as a citizens collective and as a voluntary organization, are there any ways to get involved in advocacy? Do we have any avenues to start questioning these laws, these policies that are put into place? How are the ways that...
Sorry, I lost the last sentence you said.
I was saying that are there any avenues or ways that citizens like us, citizen groups and volunteer groups like the Mumbai Water Narratives, like Marine Life of Mumbai, can help in advocating policy change? Do you know of any avenues that we can do that?
So a lot of these policies actually have public hearing, and most people, I think including us before we got into MLM, are unaware that these public hearings exist. So I think what needs to be amplified is that there is a framework for this. And then if that framework is not being implemented, that's something everyone can push for. But I think we all need to be aware of what exists in the system already, the frameworks that are already there. And other than that, it's just, spreading awareness is what leads to then advocating for better policies and things like that. And there are forums for that. There can be there are multiple groups working on the coast in Mumbai, conservation of the coastal ecology of Mumbai. So yeah, there are avenues. I think they could be streamlined better. Yes.
Okay, we have a last question from Aslam again. I know there are different diving levels. Does the MLOM incorporate any of the diving techniques? And a follow-up to that is that snorkeling is an event which may increase the participation of people of Mumbai. So what do you want to say to that?
Aslam, it's an exciting idea, but I don't know whether Mumbai's water quality is okay to dive or snorkel in. But if you have any suggestions on how we can actually make that happen, we'd be very happy to discuss.
Aslam, do you want to comment on it? Anyway, so now I think we have reached the end of our time, and I would like to close the session. I am putting the link of the exhibition, the Saline Waters exhibit, in the chat box. There are curatorial walks every day till Saturday. I think this is the 4th of them, and then we have one on public health that's coming up. And there is also a panel that will happen just right after this at 6 o'clock. So those of you who want to continue to that, please let us know. Write to us also with your questions and your comments at mumbaiwaternarratives@gmail.com and livingwatersmuseum@gmail.com. And you can also reach MLOM via Instagram and their website itself. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Abhishek and Sarang, for taking us through the exhibition and for the exhibit itself, which has turned out to be stunning. So thank you.
Thank you
So much.